So here's what we know about UFOs. The U.S. government has verified they're real, in the sense there are objects moving in the sky that we cannot identify. They're certain they do not belong to a foreign nation. They're not from Russia or from China. And third, we know that these objects are moving in ways that we cannot replicate, explain, or even understand. So everyone who's studied this in the U.S. government will admit that privately. No one has really said that out loud, and that may change very soon. So for the first time in half a century, there will be a public hearing on UFOs. A House Intelligence Subcommittee will hear from 2 senior Pentagon officials tomorrow on what the Defense Department actually knows about these objects. The Pentagon and intel agencies are reportedly feuding tonight on how much the public should know. Lou Elizondo is a man who does know. He's a former Pentagon official who ran this program looking into these objects. He joins us tonight. Lou, thanks so much for coming on. So
Thanks, Tucker.
What would possibly be the justification for holding back from the public what the U.S. government, which the public pays for, knows about these objects?
Well, in fact, it might not be so much what we know, Tucker, but the fact that we don't know some things. Clearly,
Right.
from a national security perspective, the last thing you want to do is ever broadcast your, if you will, your intelligence gaps to your enemy. And in this particular case, you said it yourself, there's a lot more we don't know than we do know. But you're right, this is a historic move. Since 50 years ago, the last time we were faced with this, you had the Air Force briefing the results of Project Blue Book. Here we are half a century later, and now we have senior DOD officials now, not just the Air Force, coming up and providing information to Congress and ultimately the American people.
Do you know if there have been conversations between American officials and their counterparts in, say, Russia and China over these objects? I mean, they're not just spotted around U.S. military installations, but also in those countries and around the world. Do we ever talk about this offline?
Well, let me give you a real example. There was a very classified memorandum at some point back in the 60s that the United States and Russia agreed in writing that we would report to each other when we were looking at the northern tier, making sure that neither one of us thought the other was shooting a nuclear weapon at the other. And there's actually a small paragraph that says, look, if you happen to see a UFO, do us a favor, call us first before you press the button, because it may very well be just that, a UFO, and not us. And so I think there are certain examples of that where we had information sharing with other countries, in some cases allied countries, and now even in the law that was just passed recently, that was if you will, sponsored by Senator Gillibrand and Senator Marco Rubio, where it says now we are enjoined, we have to work with our friends and allies on this topic. It's no longer an option. We have to do it.
So you've answered 2 questions. One, the U.S. government has had full awareness of this for 60 years. This was in the 1960s, you said. And second, we know for dead certain these are not foreign military aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, look, Congress is doing the right thing by having these hearings. And I'll tell you something else. I suspect there's going to be more hearings after this. This is just establishing the baseline for Congress. But we know, again, about Project Blue Book. We know about some efforts beforehand. And we know about my program, ATIP. And then after that, we had the UAP task force. But what about the 40-some years in between? What other efforts did the U.S. government have? What did we learn in that time? And is there a way we can get that information now under a single tent so we're not, in essence, reinventing the wheel? We can compare and contrast information we learned from before as compared to what we're learning now with better and more capable equipment.
This is an inherently significant story, and maybe that's why it's been written off as the province of crazy people. You've persisted, though. We appreciate it. Lou Elizondo, thanks so much for that preview.
Thank you for having me.
Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.